a live recording of Arts for the Health of It. If you are around when we do these, jump on our Facebook or our YouTube channels and watch and interact with us and whoever we're talking to that week. And join us live because that's fun. I'm Richard Wilmore, your host.
And I'm Constanza Rader, your other host. We're excited to have Maria Ramsey with us today. She is an artist and creativity guide. We've talked a lot on this show about the different benefits of the arts, and we tried to provide at least a little bit of practical application in each episode, but today is going to be especially practical because she's going to teach us how to set up creative spaces, integrate the arts and expressive engagement in our daily lives. And I'm really excited to talk with her because my creative space needs some help. How about you, Richard?
I know. I don't have one at home. I used to have one. My entire apartment was my creative space. And then it got too much where it was like work all the time, right? Everywhere I looked was work. So I moved into a studio. But now I don't have anywhere to, now it's kind of sad because everywhere I look, I'm like, oh, there's no color anymore, or there isn't like fun curtains hanging. So I'm really excited to talk to Maria. And because it doesn't have to, I'm assuming, I don't know, we haven't filmed it yet, but I'm assuming it doesn't have to be a big room or it doesn't have to be this grand space. You just need a corner. That's what I did in my apartment a lot too.
She's kind of nodding a little bit in the back.
Yes.
So hopefully we're
She's like, okay. She's like, I got you. Just let me out there so I can talk to you. But before we start, I want to say that we are at 99 subscribers on our YouTube channel, and people who have you, I know. But if you are a YouTube person, you know that you need 100 subscribers to be able to have the like custom URL. So right now it's a bunch of random numbers, but if we get one more person to subscribe,
who's it gonna be?
So there's a tab with YouTube up, and if I see that someone subscribed during this live recording, you're gonna win something. If I can figure out how to get a hold of you, but I will be watching for the next 45 minutes. But whoever does it gets a prize to be our 100th person, because that's a big deal, and we did it fairly quickly, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. We haven't been streaming on YouTube very long, so we're excited about that.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. And season 2 is coming up in a couple of weeks. So there's that. Anyway, the point is open up another tab when you're watching this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and win something.
There you go.
Okay. Do it during the commercial break, not now. But I'm going to read a little bit about Maria. She's a visual artist, a poet, musician, herbalist, certified feng shui practitioner, and creativity guide. I want that title, a creativity guide. Her mission is to uncover more beauty, creativity, and magic in the world. She does this by creating her own art, as well as helping artistic beings to craft supportive creative practices. And she says that she has a regular creative practice, which has been so helpful for her mental health. It helps her feel fulfilled, inspired, and more connected to her own inner wisdom. So instead of talking about her, why don't we bring her out? That would be more appropriate. So let's start the show, shall we?
Yep. Welcome to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast where you will discover creative ways to improve your health and well-being. Someone may have told you that art isn't for you, but they were wrong. Anyone can create arts for the health of it. No talent or experience necessary.
I'm just a little songbird. Try to fly my way homeward with the melody, and I make the beat. Don't know where it'll take me, cause when I'm in the dark of night, I sing my way back to the light. Come along with me, and your heart will see that a song changes everything. Oh, oh.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
I'm going to throw you up here.
Okay.
That's easier. Where do you live? I was looking and I was like, she's all scarfed up. She must be cold.
It's very cold. I live in northern Vermont, so it's not really spring here yet.
No.
Whoa.
It snowed either yesterday or the day before.
Whoa.
So it's pretty chilly.
We're recording this end of March if you're listening to this later. So in San Antonio, it's already like going to be 90 this week. So
right.
Yeah, we should start. There needs to be maybe in our budget next season for bringing guests in
Yeah.
from the cold climates and film in person, so they get a little break.
I like that. But then you'll have to have me back next year.
There we go.
That's fine, but you can set up one of our creative spaces.
Amazing.
Ooh,
that sounds
I like
perfect.
that.
Perfect. Maria, what is a creativity guide?
The way that I define a creativity guide, I call myself a guide instead of a coach because guide just feels more appropriate for my personality and who I am. And to me, a guide is really somebody who's kind of in the sometimes murky, sometimes unknown waters or forest of creativity with you. Kind of, I imagine almost like holding a torch, like a couple steps ahead rather than telling you what to do, but just kind of guiding and lighting the way as you explore creativity.
I'm curious, do you have anyone in your life that was kind of a creativity guide for you?
Ooh, good one.
That's a good question. I think I do. So I grew up as a musician. I have a lot of different artistic and creative pursuits. I always have. But my kind of serious thing growing up was music. And I have a piano teacher who was really meaningful to me and something that I really admired about her and something that I brought into my own teaching when I was teaching music for a while too is I feel like she was interested in kind of the weird things that I would say outside of just like, this is how you play the piano, this is what you practice this week. She would be interested in, I would tell her like the birthday party that I threw for my stuffed bear, or the way that I was practicing the piano on my teeth and imagining different colors for the different notes. And she was interested in hearing about that. And I think that's unusual, but really valuable to have an adult validate those experiences.
Yeah, your imagination.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really special that you had that.
I think...
Oh, sorry, go.
I was just going to say, I think your imagination is so connected to creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I read that you create every day. Is this true?
I do. Not 100% every day. There are exceptions, but almost every day. That's something that I really try to prioritize in my schedule.
Is there go ahead.
No, I was you're probably asking the same question. Why do you do it? Why is that a priority? And what have you noticed? When did you start doing that regularly? And what have you noticed in your life? That's my question. I feel like I have 9 questions for you, but I'll start with those 2.
They're all related. I think I started doing it more consistently almost a year ago, like last spring or summer. And it's important for me because expressing my creativity does make me feel just like a more balanced, whole, well person. I think on a really tangible level, I'm a nicer person when I make time for my creativity, especially first thing in the day before I get sucked into priorities from other people for work or for family or friendships or all the other aspects of my life. And it's just a way to connect to my joy and my kind of inner child and my inner wisdom on a daily basis, which I think is really valuable. And I have noticed after doing that consistently that I have a much stronger connection to those parts of myself. I think I have more access to them than I did before I was doing it so consistently.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people think that creativity is based on inspiration or feeling. If you feel it, then you do it. But it sounds like you've created some structure and like, okay, it's something I'm going to do every day. And through that process, you've gained more access to inspiration and creativity.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. And that's something that I think about a lot and something I talk about a lot. I think as creative people, we have this tendency to resist structure because we want to be in the flow and we want to wait until inspiration strikes. But if you don't make space for inspiration to come to you and you don't make time for inspiration to come to you, like maybe it'll hit you while you're on a walk or in the shower, but you're not really prioritizing it in your life. And sometimes that means that I sit down and I make something that's not good, which
Welcome
like that's
to my
not really the
life.
point to make something good. But the more that I make space for it regularly, the more likely I am to find that creative inspiration. I think it's like a muscle. Like you have to use it in order for it to be consistent.
Yeah.
I like that, like making time for it. I know a lot of like I guess a lot of creative people do that. Authors will sit down and make themselves write every day. Or musicians will write every day. I'm in a lot of groups of like video creators who they have challenges where you make a 5-minute thing every day just to like see your progress and to see what you can create. I think that's really smart. Can you talk about like the types of things that you're doing daily? Because I'm assuming you're not taking 3 hours every day to create, right? So like if people are thinking like every day, that's so much time out of my day, how can I do that for myself? How can they do that? And what are you creating?
So what I've been working on lately is botanical illustrations and poetry, which sometimes kind of go together, but it's been a really fun way for me to express my creativity. And I definitely don't do it for 3 hours every day. I would love to. And hopefully at one point in my life, I get to do that. But I think it starts with making space for it in smaller ways, whether that's the end goal or not. I think we can start with it in much smaller pieces. So for me, I try to commit to 30 minutes every day, which feels doable for me and my schedule. But I think even if you can do 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, I think that is better than nothing. And it makes a big impact over time.
So you came from, I'm curious about your artistic background because it sounds like you've done a lot. So you came from kind of formal music training, and were you always doing visual arts and writing within there, or is that something you discovered later on in your career?
I was doing all of them all the time when I was younger. They were all just fun for me. And I think music became the thing that I did seriously. It was like my extracurricular that went on my college applications, and it ended up being my college major. And it was the thing that I did more seriously, I guess, like I said. And it kind of pushed away my other creative pursuits just because it took up so much of my time. And while I love music and it's always going to be something that's important to me, I think that the way that I ended up pursuing music for a long time kind of took out a little bit of the creativity that I enjoyed about it as a kid. Like when I was younger, I would spend hours harmonizing for fun and transposing for fun and playing stuff by ear and making up songs and all these things that felt really fun and creative. But that was very different from studying a violin concerto and working on measure by measure how to do the articulation and the dynamics so precisely and exactly what they needed to be. So it kind of took that fun aspect out of it for me, even though I'm grateful for my music training and I love classical music too. It's just it wasn't fulfilling in the same way. So I kind of came back around to those other creative pursuits and to music. I have been doing music in a way that does feel a little bit more fun and creative recently, like just playing for fun and doing a little bit more fiddling and improvising. So that's been fun to kind of get back to.
I can imagine there's people listening that are already maybe checking themselves out of, what am I trying to say? That maybe can't relate to growing up with engaging in a lot of creative pursuits, that, they felt like they were never that kid. So what types of people do you work with as a creativity guide? And what do you say to people that might come to you that don't have as rich creative background as you have?
That's a really good question. I work both with people who already consider themselves creative and just need that accountability and structure and someone to kind of guide them in the direction to making more of the art that they want to make. And then also people who maybe have this inkling that they want to do something creative, but they feel a little stuck maybe in how to get in touch with that creativity. And I would say that everyone is creative. I really fully believe that. I think you're both on board with that too, based on your
Maybe.
podcast and what I've heard. So I think if somebody feels intimidated by, maybe they don't feel like they were an artist, maybe somebody told them that they weren't good at art, either explicitly or implicitly through their actions, that they weren't good at art or music or writing or whatever it is that they were interested in doing. I like to think about creativity as play. And so maybe if like sitting down to make a painting feels like too much, that doesn't really feel like your thing, or you're not sure if you can do it, I would ask what feels like play and how can you start to do that in little ways.
I like that.
I think so far, one of my favorite takeaways of something that you said today was that not even everything you do is good. And I think that's important when people are beginning or looking at professionals, to know that even professionals aren't making masterpieces every single time they create something, and to know that that also isn't the point of doing what we're doing. It's not to have the next great piece of art in some museum. It has nothing to do with that. It's the actual process of doing it. So I love that you said that not everything you do is actually that good.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I mean, that's part of why making space for creativity every day is so important. I think that another reason that we sometimes have resistance to doing that, especially those of us who tend to be artistic or who maybe have artistic goals, I think it can feel really frustrating to put that pressure on yourself that you have to make something really good every day. And I think that's part of the reason why we're waiting for inspiration to strike, because it's like, if we don't have that inspiration, it's not going to be any good. But it's still worthwhile, because like you said, that's not really what it's about. And sometimes I start making something that's like embarrassingly bad. And then by the end of the session, like 30 minutes in, an hour in, sometimes longer than that, it turns into something that's actually one of my favorite things I've ever made. And maybe it's just like a little nugget that I have to come back to later, but it's like I kind of had to work my way through the muck first to get there.
It reminds me of there's some programs in medical education that are starting to incorporate more of the humanities in medical education. And one of the reasons, and they're using the arts quite a bit. And one of the positive outcomes that they see when their students, take an art class, go through art appreciation, all that kind of stuff, is they start to become a little bit more comfortable with the unknown. Because if you think about the type of kid that might come into into a medical school, they are probably have done a lot of STEM. They've probably done a lot where their coursework has been very exacting and you have to have the right answer. And when you come into medicine and you're working with humans, there isn't always that clear-cut answer. And so they're finding that even when medical students are engaged in the arts, and they are finding that we're like, okay, I'm going to start and I don't know if the outcome is going to be what I want it to be, or any good, quote unquote. But it helps. That's kind of a muscle in itself, is sometimes we have to take risks in our humanness, and we don't always know what the right answer. Sometimes there isn't like a quote unquote right answer. And in the arts, I think we really have the ability to really flesh that out and play with that idea every time we interact with the arts, right?
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that reminds me of when I was teaching music. It really made me grateful for the fact that I had been doing music from a young age and had that experience with like doing hard things that didn't go well at first or sometimes
Mhm.
ever, because we have like, it's very easy to be risk averse as humans, I guess. But I think that the beautiful thing about creativity also is that it's a really low stakes
Mhm.
risk. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but like it's just a drawing or
Just a
a
piece of paper.
story. Exactly. You can make mistakes. It's not going to hurt anybody. So
Yeah.
why not go for it?
Yeah. Go ahead, Richard. Looks like you had a question.
Oh, I was just going to say that I want to give people a way to go for it by talking about the creative, like how to set up your own creative space. But I want to take a break before that. So if you had other stuff you wanted to talk to her about, well, wait. We're good?
Yep, we're good.
Also, my headphones went out, so I have no idea what you guys have been talking about
Oh,
for
no.
the last 5 minutes.
I'll
It
catch you up in the break.
It looked really good, and I can't wait to watch the replay and listen to it again to hear what I missed. But we're going to take a break, and then we'll be back with Maria to talk about how you can actually set up your own creative space in your home.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives. Whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at the power of music in our everyday lives through the lens of science and health, sports and entertainment, business, and education. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio. Unleash the power of music.
Make your day richer with The Richard Wilmore Show. Meet amazing musicians, talented actors, brilliant authors, hilarious comedians, and the most creative people in entertainment. Download the KP Media TV app to watch on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire.
Medical professionals are burning out at an alarming rate. Burnout can cause health workers to feel hopeless, trapped, helpless, worthless, depressed, sleepless, and tired. By joining the Hearts Need Art Gratitude Grams program, medical staff receive a personalized email and video from a musician, an artist, or writer once a week that includes a message of thanks, an encouraging song, uplifting poem, or a simple art activity. After watching their gratitude gram, participants report feeling more hopeful, empowered, energized, and appreciated. If you are or know a healthcare worker that would like to receive free gratitude grams, please visit heartsneedart.org.
We're back with Maria Ramsey, who is a creativity guide, which feels like a dream job to me. I don't know, same. And I want to talk about how people can actually set up a creative space for themselves, because I think people get overwhelmed with that it's expensive, that they have to leave, that they have to go to a paint and sip night to like do something, and you don't have to.
You definitely don't have to. And you mentioned at the beginning of the episode that it could even just be a corner. And I fully agree with that. I think if you have the luxury to have a whole separate room for your art studio or your music studio or whatever, that's amazing. I don't have that luxury right now. A lot of us don't. And that's fine. So like for me, my creative space, first of all, I think it's important to have a dedicated creative space in your home somewhere, but I also think it's okay if it's multifunctional, if it needs to be in your home, because a lot of us don't have maybe a whole corner that you can dedicate to your art. So for me, for example, my creative space is also my workspace where I do maybe less creative tasks like emails and writing things that are not so creative, doing taxes and whatever. but it's also my creative space. So something that has helped me and something that can help you set up more of a creative space, if it does need to be multifunctional, is to have storage for your creative supplies. And I feel like when I first started doing this, it seemed so like so basic that it didn't even matter, but it actually makes a huge difference. So I have all my colored pencils in little cups and I put them away in a specific place. And I have very specific storage for my art paper and notebooks. And just having a space to put them away when I'm not working on them so I can turn my desk back into my work desk makes such a difference. It makes it so much easier for me to take out my art when I do want to work on my art projects. It like takes away that resistance that I think sometimes we have, like, oh, it's going to take so long to set up my art projects, or I don't really have time, I don't have space. But if you can kind of have really streamlined storage, that makes it a lot easier.
I suppose it also helps to like kind of not make it so chaotic. To me, in my head, I'm thinking like paintbrushes everywhere and colored pencils. And if I were to look at that, I'd be like, I need to clean, you know, it's like, like when you put it all away, then it's organized. It's like vacuum marks when you do the carpet. Like, okay, this I can handle. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about storage.
Yeah, exactly. Because I used to do that too. Like I would have my colored pencils and my paper out everywhere, and it just felt so chaotic. And especially now I work from home, so that would feel especially chaotic because my art supplies would be all over my desk or all over my dining table. So that's been really helpful to have a dedicated space for those.
It also sounds like taking them in and out creates some ritual around the creative process. Like you have a process for, okay, I'm going to start a creative activity. I'm going to get out my supplies. And then when I'm done, I'm going to put them away. So it kind of creates these like bookends to kind of, I know for humans, like those rituals are really important for us to put parentheses around things that are important and to help our brains focus, right? Like having some sort of rich, I don't know, is that something that you talk about in your creativity guiding about creating rituals around art?
Yeah, I definitely do. And that is another aspect that is really helpful for me, of having my art supplies in the specific places, like you said, because something that I talk a lot about too is the idea of boundaries and creating boundaries around the things that are important to you, especially your creativity, your art practice, whatever that is for you. And I think having those boundaries really allows me to, when I'm making my art, when I'm in that creative space, that creative time that I've carved out for myself, I can really fully be in it. And I don't have to think about like, oh, I probably should be checking emails right now. I should be making lunch. I should be doing something else. I can really kind of sink into the moment. And I know this is what I'm working on now. And then once I put my creative supplies away, now I can move on to the rest of my day. But I've carved out that space, and it's kind of a protected space and time that I have made for something that's really important to me.
Okay, I'm having like a personal epiphany aha moment. Like I'm like, oh my God, my brain's exploding. I've never thought of ritual, the similarity, or really kind of that boundaries are a type of ritual. Like that ritual and boundaries. What? They're the same thing. Like,
Take a moment.
I'm like, my brain's still like absorbing. But like, it's so true. Because, you know, if you think about boundaries, and like, I think of that in the realm of like psychology, and you need better boundaries in your life. But really what that is boundaries exist to protect the things that are important to us, and rituals exist to help protect the things that are important to us. What?
Exactly.
It's like, you know, so if you think about, you know, even like a religious ritual or like Thanksgiving, you know, so this is a period where, and yes, there's a lot of controversy about Thanksgiving. Let's think about it in kind of the abstract. Okay, we're using this as an opportunity to stop everything and celebrate gratitude. Like we put ceremony and ritual and boundaries around our time, and in the ritual, the elaborateness of it, that those processes help us create those boundaries. Oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm going off on a tangent. My brain's exploding.
Well,
I'm going to need to write about this in my journal later in my creative spot.
Amazing. Well, they're very connected. And I think that the idea of carving out creative space is too. It's like, and that's kind of a boundary in itself, like creating a specific space in your home for creativity. You're creating boundaries around it because it's important to you.
Richard, you're going to have to take over. I'm just going to process this.
I guess I timed the commercial break wrong, and we should have taken it now to give you a couple of minutes to gather your thoughts. So I'm thinking like I'm a person who's going to set it up. I have nothing. I know I need organization. I know I need drawers. What are some maybe top things that you think people should have in their creativity space?
Good question.
I think it's a good idea to have something that inspires you. And I think that that can look different for different people. I like to think about it in terms of my senses. So I would encourage people to think about first, what senses do you feel especially connected to? Like maybe if you're a visual artist of some kind, you might be really sensitive to visual cues and colors and shapes and things like that. Or maybe you're really into smell, or maybe you're really into touch. And so I think then thinking about what things really inspire you on a visual level, or smells that feel really cozy or inspiring or energizing to you, kind of whatever you want to cultivate, or textures. Like I have a velvet chair that I like to sit on in my creative space, like having those sensory details, that those can also kind of help you drop into the moment.
Oh my gosh, I'm taking so many notes.
Amazing.
Yes.
So that's one for sure. And then another thing that I think can be helpful to incorporate into your creative space, and this really comes from my perspective as a feng shui practitioner, is plants. Because plants and feng shui represent the wood element, which is all about growth, and it has to do with new beginnings as well. So that can be a really supportive thing to bring in if you want movement and growth and inspiration in your creative practice. And it also, plants teach us a lot of lessons about caring and nurturing for another living being. So if you think about your creative practice as something that can be cared for and nurtured over time, and you kind of watch it grow and blossom, a plant can be a really beautiful metaphor for that, and a way to represent your intention for your creative practice in your space.
I have dead plants in my room. Does that count?
Just gonna say that. That's
Like
not a good
answer-
sign for me as a person.
It's not recommended to have dead plants, but that's okay.
See, I told you I need this to update my space.
Maybe you do.
Well, people are thinking that they need you, which everyone should. How can they connect with you? How can they get a hold of you? And are you doing like virtual things, or is it all in person?
I'm doing virtual things. I'm doing mostly virtual things at the moment. But if anybody is in Northern Vermont, I'm happy to do things in person too. There's not a lot of people here. But my website is thephilosophers.stem.com. That's probably the best way to find me. And then I'm also on Instagram at The Philosopher's Stem. And I have a podcast called Never Wear Boring Socks, where I talk about creativity.
Nice.
I know, that's I think what drew me to you when I found you. Because we talked about that, our love of fun socks.
We did.
Yes. I mean, it's hot here, so I'm never really in like fun socks anymore. But when I lived in cold climates, I love fun socks.
It's another way to express your creativity, which is what I love about it. Like you could wear boring socks, or you could wear fun socks. So why not fun socks?
Why not fun socks?
See, I have boring socks. This is my problem, guys. I have dead plants and boring socks. Okay.
But I also think it depends what boring means to you too. Like they could be boring to somebody else. Like maybe they're plain and black, but maybe they're really meaningful to you, or maybe they go with your outfit.
Oh.
Then they're not so boring.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
We should have thought about this earlier. We all could have brought out our favorite socks. And really got to look at Stanzi's sporting socks.
Oh
Yeah.
boy. Let's pass.
All right. That's a different episode. Well, I want to make sure, Stanzi, if you have any other questions.
I'm still reeling from the last half hour. I'm going to need a minute.
You can take a minute.
Okay.
You can, and then you can listen to it again. You can watch it. You can do everything. But Maria, thank you so much for coming on today and rocking Stanzi's world. And she's now a brand new person, I think.
Amazing. Well, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This was really lovely to talk to both of you.
Yeah, we love connecting with people that are really working to make creativity more accessible and guide us, because I think this is something that isn't ingrained as part of our culture in the United States. Like, it's not a normal part of our everyday life. So we have to have someone teach us how to do it. So thank you for what you're doing and for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially as adults.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It is so interesting that we have to reteach ourselves how to use color pencils.
Because it's something we know how to do as kids, but it gets kind of squashed out of us. And
we're so confident as kids, we write on walls. We're,
I hadn't thought of that.
And now we're like,
oh my gosh,
I can't even do it in my own private. Okay, it's too much.
My brain is exploding.
It's too much. We need to. It's too much, and we need to give Stanzi a break. So wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast, make sure you're subscribing and make sure you go on our YouTube channel and get us to 100 subscribers, please. And thank you.
So close.
So close. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast produced by Heartsmeet Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, in partnership with the National Organization for Arts and Health. You can help others learn about the healing power of the arts by subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen or watch. The podcast is hosted by Richard Wilmore, co-hosted by Constanza Rader. Our theme song, Songbird, is written and performed by Natalie Lane. Visit heartsmeetart.org to learn how you can support our mission to create joy with people facing life-altering health challenges. Join us next week to learn more ways you can create arts for the health of it. The views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Heartsmeet Art, their staff, board members, or other affiliates. All content is created for informational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or to diagnose and treat any health condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.